Hello everyone, this is Neha Sharma once again with you with chapter number 2, A Triumph of Surgery, which is written by James Herriot. So dear kids, in our last video, in part number 1 of the explanation, we have read that Tricky got very ill and the doctor suggested Mrs. Pumphrey that the dog must be hospitalized for 15 days. When Mrs. Pumphrey heard this, she nearly fainted, right? And she cried. So now we have to read this on page number 3. Please keep pencil in your hand so that you can write down the word meanings. On page number 3, I marched out to the car carrying the little dog wrapped in a blanket. The entire staff was roused and maids rushed in and out bringing his day bed, his night bed, favorite cushion, toys and rubber rings, breakfast bowl, lunch bowl, supper bowl. Realizing that my car would never hold all the stuff, I started to drive away. As I moved off, Mrs. Pumphrey, with a despairing cry, threw an armful of the little coats through the window. I looked in the mirror before I turned the corner of the drive. Everybody was in tears. So here Mr. Herriot is telling that when doctor was carrying the dog to hospital, right, because he told that it is the only way to save Tricky as he was very ill. So he went, he picked the dog and just keep that dog, wrapped that dog in a blanket. The entire staff was roused. Roused means what? Roused means cause to stop sleeping, right? That is roused. And what happened after that? That when he just wrapped the dog, all the maids were then woken up and they asked, get out all the Tricky's stuff. They were asked, Mrs. Pumphrey asked them to get whatever the things of Tricky, his stuff included. Stuff means his things, what he has to carry to the hospital. His stuff included things like his day bed, night bed, favorite cushion, toy, rubber rings, breakfast bowl, lunch bowl and his snack bowl also. And Mr. Herriot knew that so much of these things won't be fit in his car. So he started rushing things. As the doctor was leaving with Tricky, Mrs. Pumphrey threw a lot of coats that Tricky used to wear in the car. As the narrator was turning the car on the turn, he saw through the mirror, which is the rear mirror, that everyone, the staff, Mrs. Pumphrey and whosoever was there in the house, everyone was crying. Everyone was crying. Out on the road, I glanced down the pathetic little animal gasping on the seat by my side. I patted the head and Tricky made a brave effort to wag his tail. Poor old lad, I said, you haven't kick in you, but I think I know a cure for you. So here, when Mr. Herriot was taking Tricky to his hospital, right, he patted the little animal who responded by wagging his tail, by moving his tail. And the narrator then thought that what is your cure? That cure is sure that you will be all right. So that he will be better, right? Next, at the surgery, the household dogs surged around me. Tricky looked down at the noisy pack with dull eyes and when put down, lay motionless on the carpet. The other dogs, after sniffing round him for a few seconds, decided he was an uninteresting object and ignored him. Now, as soon as they reached the hospital, who? Doctor and Tricky, all the other dogs, they also, they wanted to see that who is he, and they also gathered around the doctor. And Tricky looked at all of them. When the doctor put him down on the carpet, he lay motionless. Actually, he didn't move. The other dogs, they sniffed him and thought to themselves that he was a very uninteresting object because he was not showing any interest. Okay, and they ignored him. They did not play with him, and they did not stay there because it seemed, uninteresting object for them. I made up a bed for him in warm loose box next to the one where the dogs slept. For 2 days I kept an eye for him, giving him no food but plenty of water. At the end of the 2nd day, he started to show some interest in his surroundings, and on the 3rd day he began to whimper when he heard the dog in the yard. Now what happened? The dog, they went away, they did not took any interest in him, right? So then the narrator made the bed for Tricky, and what kind of bed he gave him? It was a warm box only, along with the other dogs. For 2 days he kept him on the water only. He gave him only water and nothing else to eat even, right? Only water. On the 2nd day, what happened? He roamed around looking at the place around him, and on the 3rd day he was also making noise to let the people in the hospital know that he too wanted to go out with other dogs, right? So like this, his condition, he was curing actually, because he was not eating anything. So the biggest problem was that Mrs. Pumphrey was, overdoing, right? So here the doctor got the treatment, and on the 3rd day he was barking that he wanted also to roam here and there. When I opened the door, Tricky trotted out and was immediately engulfed by Joe, the greyhound, and his friends. After rolling him over and thoroughly inspected him, the dogs moved off down the garden. Tricky followed them, rolling slightly with his surplus fat. So here he said, one word is there, engulfed. No, engulfed means what? Engulfed means to sweep over, right? And he is saying that when he, on the 3rd day, he was moving all around, he was roaming all around. So the narrator came there. When he opened the door, Tricky quickly came out and was surrounded by Joe. Now who is this? Joe. This is a dog, right? A greyhound, and his friends. They surrounded the dog Tricky, and they sniffed him for a moment. All of them left for the garden, where Tricky followed them, because they did not take much interest in that dog, right? But Tricky, he wanted to accompany those dogs, so Tricky followed all those dogs. Later that day, I was present at feeding time. I watched while Tristan sloped the food into the bowls. There was unusual headlong rush, followed by sounds of high-speed eating. Every dog knew that if he fell behind the others, he was liable to have some competition for the last part of his meal. Now, this word liable means what? Liable means likely to do something, right? Now in the evening, when all the dogs of that hospital, they were served food, right, in the evening time. Tristan actually, who was a helper in there. So especially when he was serving, so all of the dogs, they were eating with great speed, because they knew that if they didn't finish quickly their food, so then the other dogs, after finishing his meal, would come to eat their meal. So this they don't want to happen. When they had finished, Tricky took a walk round the shining bowls, licking casually inside one or two of them. Next day, an extra bowl was put out for him, and I was pleased to see him jostling his way towards it. Now what happened here? Please underline 2-3 words. One is licking. Lick means what? Licking means to pass the tongue over, right? So that is called licking. Second is jostling. Jostling means to push, right? He was making his way actually. So what happened here, that when everybody finished their food, Tricky went around looking at the shining bowls and also licked a few bowls, the used bowls of other dogs. The very next day, an extra bowl was put for him, and the narrator was happy to see him running towards his bowl. Then he started getting better easily and quickly. For then on he progressed. His progress was rapid. He had no medical treatment of any kind, but all day he ran about with the dogs, joining in their friendly scrimmages. He discovered the joys of being bowled over, tramped on and squashed every few minutes. He became an accepted member of the gang, an unlikely, silky little object among the shaggy crew, fighting like a tiger for his share at meal times and hunting rats in the old hen house at night. He had never had such a time in his life, right? So he told that he started playing after some days. So here please underline some of the words. First is scrimmage. Scrimmage is a confused struggle or fight, you can say. Next is trampled. Trample means to tread on or to crash. Next is squashed. Squashed is flat, soft or out of shape. Okay. And next what is shaggy? Shaggy is long, thick or unkempt, right? So here what happened, that when he started taking interest in other dogs also, this Tricky, he also wanted to play with them, right? He did not require any medicine and started playing with the other dogs the whole day. They all used to play with each other, bump into each other, walk over each other and squash each other. All of the other dogs accepted him as a family member, although he was very different from some others, as he was very well taken care of by Mrs. Pumphrey, and the others were not, right? He also used to fight for his meals with his fellow dogs who were much larger in size than him. And at night he would also hunt rats in the hen house. He was enjoying, as he had never done such things before had. So dear students, I hope you enjoyed the chapter till here. Please read it here once again, and the next part of the chapter we will do in the next video. Thank you very much. Stay safe, stay healthy.